And welcome back once again to Hawkeye's House of Horrors. And it's been way too long, but I'm back. That's me, Hawkeye. And I'm going to bring to you my next film, next classic horror film from 1980 to bring to you. But it has been quite a while since I've done a review. And there's things I've been doing in my life and stuff. And I actually do a blog about the Toronto Maple Leafs. So I've kind of been putting a bit of time and energy into that for now. But I thought, man, it's now December. I gotta get back to watching some of these films and put a review on there for some people on YouTube. But definitely, I was going to share with you here um, some pictures I at for Halloween. Hopefully, you can see them. It's on my phone, so I'm not sure if it'll come in all that great. But there I am. That's me as Superman, fighting off the filth of the streets and saving the world from all the badness. So I was Superman, handing out candy for Halloween, and well, after a night of doing that, there's Superman having a cold beer. So it was a good night. I had quite a few kids, but man, that was like over a month ago. So thought I'd share that with you. But here I am. I'm back. A little bit of snow coming down outside there. Wearing my Darth Vader slippers. I'm ready to go. And I'm going to bring for you a Canadian horror film from 1980. Of course, this is number two. Um, I'm in the top two of my personal horror films of 1980. And this one is The Changeling. It was directed by Peter Medak. But this film, personally, I would say this is an excellent film to watch on a dark and rainy, stormy night. This is a perfect film for that because this is like a haunted house ghost story. And it's interesting at this time when they were making horror films, there was quite a few really good ones that were being released, and this is just one of them. The Changeling, Peter Medak. I really haven't seen many of his films. He did a lot of stuff on TV, stuff like back in the day, Remington Steele, Magna PI, even the Twilight Zone back in the 80s when they brought that show back in. I think he did like five or six of those shows. Um, but sadly, for me, this film didn't springboard his career into getting maybe more mainstream films or bigger name films. That's okay though, because like as I said, he um, went on to have a very good career directing a lot of stuff. As I said, a lot of stuff was on TV. He did do Species 2, which I think I saw way back in the day when it was released, and I don't think it was all that good. But unfortunately, he doesn't have a big repertoire of horror films that he did. But as I said, he did do some Twilight Zone back in the day. He was, in fact, not the first choice to do this film. He was the third choice. There was Donald Cammell, who did Demon Seed back in 1977, and Tony Richardson, who did Tom Jones back in the early mid 60s. I think it won Oscar for Best Picture. This is nothing like Tom Jones, but those guys were working on this film, and I think it was through creative differences they stepped out. And Peter Medak came in, and he literally didn't have very much time, like a month, I think I read, to get this thing going after script rewrites and everything like that. So I think he did a really, really, really good job um, in bringing this film out. Now, the it was actually based on a novel by Russell Hunter, and as the story goes, it's actually kind of based on his own experiences with the supernatural. So that's kind of interesting. Now, the screenplay was done by William Gray, who went on the same year to write Prom Night. Personally, I'm not a big fan of the original Prom Night, but there are some fans out there, as well as the Philadelphia Experiment. That was a John Carpenter flick. I think he was one of the producers. He might have been a writer too. I apologize, I'm not 100% sure, but that one was good. I like that one. And Diana Maddox. So the two wrote this, and she wrote a couple other films, but this was like her biggest, most well-known film was this one here. Now, the film was released on March the 28th, 1980, and it had a pretty big budget for that time. I'm going to go into who's in it, so it's like, yeah, it makes sense. It was a big budget, like with the actor, one particular actor that's in it. But it had a budget of $6.6 million, and I guess like it did okay at the box office. I think I was getting a different numbers, but it looks like it made back 12 million. I read that would be 4.44. I'm sorry, $44.8 million today. So it did okay. It made its money back. But I'm going to jump into the story and the actors of this film. But really, we have a great opening to the film, and it really sets up the rest of the film. As we have George C. Scott, he plays John Russell, who is out with his family, so his wife, Joanna, played by Jean Marsh, and their child, Kathy, played by Michelle Martin. They're all out as a family, but their car has died. So they're pushing it down the highway, pushing this dead car um, to get some roadside assistance, to get some help. So once he gets over to a phone booth and starts calling someone to get assistance for the car, tragically, horribly, his wife and his daughter are killed by a snowplow. Um, a car spins out and the plow, there's a horrible accident or potential collision with those two vehicles, but they run in and kill his wife and daughter. Um, I must say though, like I forgive this film for this, but there is no way there would be a telephone booth in the middle of nowhere on a highway. But I forgive it for that. No, that wouldn't happen. Um, but anyways, it really sets up the rest of the film because, like before the credits even roll, you see Scott's character and the pain and the sorrow and his uh, realization of death or knowledge of death is right there, right before the credits roll. And as I said, it really sets up the rest of the film. Now, I must say, in this film, I'm going to put it out there right now. This is the one horror film of 1980 that I'm going to share with you. Uh, this is the one, this is the performance where I'm like, hey, he could have been nominated for an Oscar in this role. He is excellent. He really carries this film, does an amazing job. Uh, and George C. Scott has been in some just absolutely amazing films through the years. There's like The Hustler with Paul Newman, Doctor Strangelove by Stanley Kubrick and with Peter Sellers, Anatomy of a Murder with James Stewart, which I absolutely love that film, and Patton. These are all amazing films, and he's an amazing actor. And maybe I'm wrong. I mean, he's been dead now for 24 years, I think, but um, people don't really talk about him when they talk about great actors, and that's too bad because he's a fantastic actor, and to me, he really brings a sense of realism to the film in his reaction and his stance in this film towards like what I said, death, and even the supernatural and how he's dealing with it. He really adds something to this film, and that's definitely a big plus and a big reason why this is such a great film. And then in addition, I think it's really cool. His wife, she's not in the film very long at all. I mean, she's dead before the credits roll, but is Jean Marsh. She was also in Willow. That might be her most famous role, or the other one might be Return to Oz as well. Um, Amazing films, and she was the villain in both of those. Um, but a cool side note for me as well is she was also married to John Pertwee back in the 60s, who went on and played Doctor Who back in the early 70s. So that's pretty cool as well to me. So, anyways, back to the story. John Russell. Um, he's a very sad, very hurt individual, but he's also quite skilled musician. That's his job. Um, but he's going to move to Seattle now and try and get his life back together after this horrible tragedy that he's gone through. And he's going to start teaching music classes at the university there. Um, so he meets up with Claire Norman, who is the very lovely Trish Vanderveer. And she sets him up with a mansion, really, that he can rent out and live in. But in the end, this house or this mansion has some horrible secrets that Scott or John Russell, along with Claire Norman, are going to uncover and reveal the truth of this unknown death that happened within its walls like 75 years prior, and bring that truth to the light. This horrible thing that happened within this mansion. An interesting note as well, Scott and Vanderveer were actually husband and wife. Um, and I was looking it up, there were at least 6 films together. Um, and I can see it when they're on screen, they actually work very well together. Um, and yeah, I can sense, I can see a bit of a chemistry going on between the two, and they were husband and wife, so there should be a chemistry there for sure. Now, the big twist in the film, and my dear, I hope you've seen this film because you're going to enjoy it a lot more not knowing all this stuff. Uh, the big twist in the film is that the son that lived in the home back in like 1906, I think they some that date is coming to me, or that's when they moved out or something. The early 1900s, anyways. He was killed actually by his own father. What happened is he was like 5 years old and he was rich. He had got all this money through a will, um, but he was physically not very good. There's a wheelchair. He was not a very able-bodied child. So the father killed him. Because he had such horrible greed and he wanted the money for himself. But what he then did is he then put a substitute in place of his child, um, so that he could have the money for himself. Thus comes the name of the film, The Changeling, which I wasn't aware of this. I didn't know this. A changeling is actually the offspring of a fairy or an elf that is left in place of a kidnapped human child. I don't know if it has to be a child, but a human in place of a human. They're called a changeling. But that's not really what that person is. So there's no fairies or elves like this guy up here, anything like that. Um, but it's got that title, or that's what a changeling is. But the changeling in the in the film is actually a senator. It's Senator Carmichael, played by the super vet actor Melvin Douglas. Um, He started acting way back in 1931. Um, Two of his early roles that I've seen and I recommend, they're good, is The Vampire Bat and The Old Dark House, both from the early 30s, black and white, good films. Um, but this was one of his last films. The other ones, like Being There with Peter Sellers and Ghost Story. I just saw that one recently for the first time, maybe a couple months ago. It was pretty good. That was his last. I remember Fred Astaire's even in that one too. Um, but he does a really good performance as a senator. He's not really in the film a whole lot. He's more in the third act. That's when he shows up and becomes very part of the story. Um, so really, you have those three actors, Scott, Vanderveer, and Douglas. They're the main characters in this film that make it work. And really, to me, back to Scott, um, like in watching this film this time, this might be the fourth or fifth time I've seen this film. I thought Trish Vanderveer did a really good job in her performance. Um, but really, this is what makes it really work is Scott. He makes this a one man show. He's there from the beginning to the end, and you follow him. And once again, yeah, it's that realism that makes it work to me, and it's not um, over the top or anything like that. Now, I'm definitely gonna go over some scenes in this film that I love or that I think are great because the things um, that are done in this film, um, some of them are great. Um, it's not just well done; it's some of it's great. Um, and some of it is images are seared in my brain. They work so well. But there is a scene. It's a great scene where Scott uh, reveals to Douglas what he knows about this murder and who he is, and it's a great scene. There's a lot of emotion going on there. Generally from Douglas, as Scott is accusing his father of murder. Um, So it's a great scene. But then that leads to really the end of what happens at the end of the film, and that's Douglas's death, as well as the house burning itself to the ground. Once the truth is revealed of what has happened here, it then burns itself to the ground. And I wrote this down about George C. Scott. I love his voice. He's got a voice. Some other films, it's even more amped up, maybe like the voice, but it sounds like he was yelling at a New York Jets game all night and he like sits around all day and inhales Cuban cigars or something. He's got a very distinctive voice, commanding voice, and I really like that. Now, the music in the film was done by Rick Wilkins. It's very good. I don't really know much more about Rick Wilkins' other work, um, but the music in this film, it really highlights the piano as it should. I mean, that's what John Russell is playing. He plays the piano when when he is composing his music or playing music. It's on the piano. Um, so yeah, it really highlights that, and it really brings the emotion out in the film really well. So I think he did a great job in this. That's by Rick Wilkins. I really like as well how in the film Scott's character is totally and utterly swallowed in grief, pain, and sorrow as he's laying in bed crying, just wailing, thinking of his wife and his daughter who are gone. Their life tragically ended too soon. When he is doing this, this is when I believe, when he first hears a sound that's happening in the mansion, that he then gets his feet moving and investigating this, finding out what is a sound. Um, and that's not by mistake to me that he is in that state when it all comes out for him, these sounds in the house. Um, I feel his character has a connection to death due to the death of his wife and his daughter. Um, and maybe that is why he is used as the person that the ghost is able to communicate with or is communicating to in order to reveal the truth about their death. Um, so I really like that. And I love how there are reoccurring props in this film. And they're not done overly done. It's just a couple times or a few times, but they're used smartly. And these things are seared in my brain because they work so well, such as the ball that comes down the stairs, or the wheelchair, which seems to really want to get at Trish Vanderveer in the scenes it's involved in. It's like um, she discovers it, or it chases her uh, through the second story of the film, or the second level of the film, or of the mansion. I'm sorry. Um, so yeah, I love how there's these reoccurring props that are used like that. And another image that's seared in my brain as well is of the child in the water, the actual child that was killed, him in the bathtub. Another a prop sort of that is used, or just him in the water. Wonderful imagery there as well. But I love the scene when the ball rolls down the stairs. This is great. This could be one of the best scenes in the film. The ball rolls down the stairs. Scott picks it up. Now, this ball actually was his daughter's. Um, in Scott's mind, there is a connection to his daughter with this ball. So this ball comes down the stairs and he picks it up and he actually jumps in his car and he drives to the river and he throws the ball in the river to get rid of it. He comes home. He looks exhausted. He hangs his jacket up um, on the stairs, and then like the post of the stairs, and then the ball bounces down the stairs again, but now it's wet. I think that is an excellent scene, and there's no dialogue. It's great. That's just excellent. I also love the seance in this film, together with some very good um, dark music by Wilkins, um, meshed in there or blended in there. It works really well. Um, so there's a medium brought in um, so that they can have this seance to communicate with the ghost to find out some answers. So Vanderveer's there and her mother is there. Um, but she's there and she's like drawing on this paper. And there's this guy like pulling, it's like this reoccurring sound. It's like whoosh, whoosh, as he's like pulling the sheet away and putting a new, like the next one is there, and she's drawing or writing on the sheet. Um, and to me, it's very Evil Dead. Although this film came out before Evil Dead, so it's not. I think that's actually something that actually happens to mediums. I don't know. I don't really know a whole lot about that. Um, but every time I see this, I'm always like, man, she's gonna run out of paper, and she's gonna start etching right on the table. But she doesn't. She's got like 1,000 sheets of paper there. But it's a very tense scene. It really sucks me in, and it does a very good job. Yeah, I love that scene as well. And I love the scene as well where Scott and Vanderveer are off because they've figured out where this body might be buried. So they're off to look for it, look for this body. Um, and it's in a house now. There's a well on this old property, and then there was a house built over top of this well, which is kind of crazy in my mind. But anyways, the mother is explaining to Scott and Vanderveer what her daughter has experienced, um, and she has seen this boy, and she is explaining it to them, um, and it's very good. I really like that. So you don't see it. She explains it, and then right after that, you then see it. And I really like that scene. It was great lighting, great acting by the kid. I'm not sure who played the kid. Um, she looks absolutely terrified. Really good, and just images there are seared in the mind. You see the boy in the water, where the well is. It's great imagery right there. Now, when this film was released back in 1980, it was rated R. Now, I'll tell you, there's no nudity. I don't like, there's no F bombs being thrown around. Like, so the language isn't harsh. There's very little violence in this film, but it was rated R. And I think it was certainly due to seeing this child being murdered in the bathtub. So, like, I'm not suggesting this should be rated PG because it shouldn't. But I think today it might be rated PG-13 because it's due to the subject matter, the intensity in that scene. Um, so, so yeah, there was no PG-13 back then. We got Steven Spielberg to thank for that with Gremlins and Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. But it was PG or R, and it's definitely not PG. So I just thought I'd throw that in there as well. Now, as I said, it's a Canadian film, but it was filmed, I found out, in New York City, Seattle, but mostly up in Vancouver and Victoria in BC, up in Canada. So that's pretty cool. And this actually won the first ever Genie Award. Now, what that is that's for Canadian films. This won the very first Genie Award for Canadian Film of the Year. This was the first one back in 1980, so that's an interesting note as well. Martin Scorsese loves this film, and it's on his top 11 scariest films of all time. So he's a big fan of this as well. And then I found out there were actually rumblings of them making a remake of this film, dating all the way back to 1980 or 1980. That was the original 2018. Try that. But nothing has been made as of yet. And it seemed to be more of a reimagining or different locations and everything like that. But from what I could find, nothing's really come into fruition about that. No film has been made at this point. But anyways, that's it. That's The Changeling. Great film. Highly recommended. And actually, my wife, of the other films uh, that I shared with you, or going to, there's one more from 1980, but this one is probably her favorite of those films. She's really not into really super gory films she can't handle that. She can handle a bit, but not like Maniac. There's no way she would like that. Um, but she loved this film. This one she really liked. So, anyways, I was pleased to bring this for you, The Changeling, and I can't wait to bring the next film. That's number one. My number one film in 1980. It's coming up next. But anyways, that was fun, and have yourself an excellent day.